So let's take a brief moment of silence. All right. Again, since the mayor's not here, I guess I will lead us in the pledge. All right, first thing is the approval of the July minutes. Had a chance to review those?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from July 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. We are going to formally close the council meeting and open it up for two hearings that we're going to be having tonight. One is the ordinance C 614, the acceptance of the West 6th Street and General Sutter. And then also ordinance 615, the codified streets and traffic. So Elijah, I'm going to open it up to you.
Sure. The first one, ordinance C614, is a pretty brief ordinance that would accept these two streets in Warwick Woodlands. They were agreed upon to be accepted as part of the land development plans that were approved. I think the first one was about 9 years ago. The following one was about 5 years ago. DMA has reviewed the construction, found them to be sufficient. And then there is going to be an 18-month security guarantee put in place so that if there is any defects, and Moravian Manor does not want to fix it, then we can fall back on that to repair. Any questions?
No, this has been in the works for quite some time. Any questions from council? Any questions from the, go ahead, Mary.
If I can, just real quickly, I was over there today driving through the neighborhood, and I did note that all of the street signs in there, in the portion that is private streets, as well as the section that we're talking about being dedicated, are signed the same with the green standard street signs. My understanding of how that works in some places is that private streets might be the signage might be a little bit different in indicating that they are private streets. That not being the case here, first of all, I just wanted to make sure that I understand what's private and what's public. I understand the dedications. I've looked at the drawings of all of those, and I understand what we're accepting in terms of being public streets. And therefore, all of the other streets, to my understanding, are private streets, and they are not the obligation of the borough to maintain, replace, repair. I just want to make sure that that is clear, that my understanding is correct on that, and make sure that that is clear to everyone involved. The dedication of streets is a significant matter for a public body, and the long-term maintenance, repair, replacement of our public infrastructure is all hitting us now. We are coming these days to understand what a significant cost is involved with those kinds of things. So I don't take my decision on this lightly, and just want to make sure that we are all clear that those streets that are not dedicated are private. the borough will not be plowing those streets. The borough will plow the streets that we have accepted. So I'd just like to clarify that my understanding is correct and make sure that that is reflected.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, and that's- And again, that's why we take, there's a lot of discussions, not just with streets, but sanitary lines, sewer lines, storm sewer lines, why we don't take that lightly, because you don't want to take on that burden forever. So there's a lot of discussions, and this Mary from the Planning Commission, there's a lot of discussion when the engineers and the applicants come forth on what's going to be dedicated with any kind of.
Right.
So you are correct. Will not be responsible for the other things. The one thing, the question you had about the signs, are you talking the street signs?
Yes, the street signs are all the green
All the
street
green.
signs with the white lettering, which is the standard public street sign. And as I said, in researching this, my understanding is that often in situations such as this, which generally the more common situation is homeowners associations. But even looking over at Luther Acres, I think I recall that their street signs look a little different.
I
Their
think
whole network being
what
private, but
I'd share just from being intimately involved with that whole going through planning is, you recall, that had the form-based code. So I thought you were talking about standards, the posts, all of that. That was very deliberate with the form-based code of everything throughout that development. So,
Okay.
but that doesn't change what will be our responsibility is solely what's in the ordinance 14.
okay, thank you for clarifying that for me.
I have one question. I too took a ride this afternoon with my wife, and she noticed something that we just like clarification on, and that was where the fire hydrants were located. They were nice and bright red, but there wasn't any yellow striping, maybe to encourage people not to park there. And I wasn't sure if that was part of our code or not. Do we try to discourage parking in front of a fire hydrant with any yellow curbing?
I'd have to look there too, wherever the fire hydrants are. I know there's only parking allowed on one side going through there. So I don't know if it was where there was parking allowed, because there's not.
Yes, there was.
on both.
Yeah, the parking, the hydrant was right next to parking. Yeah, so.
Definitely something we should look at then, especially.
Otherwise, it looked good.
Any other comments, questions, council? Any questions from the public? No further questions? You looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance C 614, acceptance of West Sixth Street and General Sutter, transferring them from the Moravian Manor to the borough of Lititz.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. All right, second one, Elijah, 15.
So as I mentioned last month, this is the codification of all streets and traffic ordinances that the borough's had since 1954 to the present. The only two new additions to this would be the Layman Street parking restriction, which we discussed over the previous few months, and the installation of parking meters along Warwick Street, which is something that has been discussed as part of the Wilbur project. Other than that, it is essentially an compilation of all our historic ordinances.
Council, question, comment?
My only comment is thank you to Elijah for pulling this all together and whoever else was involved.
This time it was just me, other than Chief Neisbinder, which I'm glad he had it all in one place.
All right. Questions, comments from the public? Hearing none. You looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance C 615 and codify the streets and traffic ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. All right, we will close the hearings and officially reopen council. So we have one presentation tonight. the preliminary final land development and lot add-on plan for Keller Brothers. And I believe Cheryl's going to be up for that.
Yes, good evening. Is this on?
Yep.
On. Good evening, Cheryl Love with the LA Group, and also Greg Lessig with the one of the vice presidents with Keller Brothers Ford is here as well. If there are any questions when I'm through the presentation, he's available as well. We've worked this plan through several reviews, have responded to comments. The plan is actually fairly simple. It is a small building addition at the back of the existing service center and approximately 5,712 square feet. There'd be 4 service bays on each side in the addition, which is darker brown here and in the renderings that you have. That is in place of existing pavement that is there currently. So we are not increasing impervious. In fact, we are increasing green space within the property. This site actually does have 2 lots on it, so this will combine. There's a small lot at the southeast corner. You can see that on the second sheet if you look kind of closely. I didn't colorize it, but it's listed as Lot 2 on the existing conditions plan. And the main portion of the property, which includes all of the existing buildings and the majority of the property bounded by the streets, is Lot 1. We are combining that just to clean that up and get those as one consistent lot with this land development plan. So the entire site, when those are combined, we're just over 3.5 acres, 3.54 acres. This plan will also provide a sidewalk along 7th Street. And there's currently sidewalk missing there from the corner of the northern corner adjacent to Weiss Market, along where we have Spruce Street and also Broad Street here. So this whole southern end will have sidewalk, 5-foot wide sidewalk and a grass strip installed. And we're shifting parking spaces inward kind of to accommodate that. So we're not truly losing parking with that sidewalk that's being added. We're adjusting the spaces. There are several other areas within the site that are a little bit complicated by the existing nonconformities that we have. So there are some modifications that we will review at the end here of the presentation, but we'd resolved most of them. And the one that was a condition of the recommendation from the Planning Commission was to work to get landscaping along the sidewalk up there along 6th Street. So the northern side of our property line or the southern side of that street along that sidewalk. They currently do not park their vehicles out in the sidewalk. They're careful with that, but aesthetically, it will improve that visually. And we are providing, we did resubmit plans showing landscape strip in there. The way we were able to accomplish that without losing parking, luckily they did have a pretty wide 10-foot area of space between these 2 rows of display space and parking. That was actually 10 feet. There are some lights within that with their concrete bases, but that area of 10 feet or so, we've been able to basically pick up their line striping and shift it down. This plan shows you the final condition, what you have. So the width of the landscape buffer is essentially being removed out of this 10-foot wide space that was for people and pedestrians to walk around and look at vehicles. But honestly, Greg said that once in a while they've had people drive a car in through there if there was an open space. So it being narrower will actually perhaps be a benefit to help redefine what the use and the purpose of that space actually is. This site was on its own well. Part of this plan is for us to connect to public water. The water line will be run out the building, crossed and down into 7th Street. We've worked back and forth with Elijah and others at the borough about that, knowing that it wasn't long ago that you had that paved. What we've come to an understanding of kind of a compromise, and what we're willing to do is we would restore, centered over top of our trench for the water connection, a distance of 30 feet horizontally. So if you're driving up 7th Street, you'll see 30 feet of new paving from curb face to curb face. So a pretty wide section that would be milled and restored, sealed properly, and would not just be a water trench as a partial patch there in the street. So we're very accepting of that condition. We will update our financial security estimate to reflect that. Even as of today, we were still emailing some with Elijah on that matter. And that's, 100% acceptable with us as a condition. So we're willing to include that and adjust our financial security estimate to an acceptable number with the borough and with your engineer. In addition, one of the modifications relates to providing a fee in lieu of some actual roadway reconstruction. Again, it's a building on top of existing. We're trying to minimize our effects on impacts for Keller Brothers, while also balancing that with the aesthetics for the area. So there was an agreed upon fee for reconstruction as well that was outlined in the letters, which is acceptable for our purposes. Beyond that, we can walk through modifications, but I want to make sure and open up to any other questions you may have on the plan. It's pretty straightforward. We have, as I say, addressed most other comments, other than posting of the security once we come to an agreed upon number, and really paying fees and getting those things executed.
I have a question. I see there's one handicap parking indicated here. Is that enough, or are there other requirements for that? Could there be more? I just wanted to know about that. I'm not familiar with the requirements.
My understanding is the handicap is provided for in relation to the numbers of employees that they're actually having. I mean, this is an unusual, I agree with you. The first look at this is look at all the parking spaces there, but the majority of that is display space and or a vehicle that's parked waiting for service. So based on numbers of employees, we did have on the cover sheet all the outlines for the required parking, and that was all outlined and reviewed through the
Yeah,
land
you
development process.
There's requirements when you're doing a development that'll have the required number of labor and industry, the number of parking spaces you have to have for however many parking spaces you have for the customer employees there, as long as they're not adding more customers or adding more employees there.
Okay.
That would add more parking
Right.
for the customers. But I think what I'm hearing is we're not
It's-
adding customer or employee parking. Be the only reason you can increase. number of
Right.
handicap.
We're essentially expanding their service bay area
But
for
you're not
more workable
changing any
space.
of the employee or customer parking.
No.
That's all
No.
what's at the bottom here, I believe, right?
Correct. All we're really doing is replicating this shift into that zone that I described in detail for you, so that we can accommodate this without losing an entire row of display. That's obviously a very highly visible space. But with the landscaping in front of it, it will, it'll come up to bumper level, but it will soften that look, and it won't be bitumen pavement and vehicles right against the sidewalk there as well.
What was this, where the building addition's going? What was that space used for right now?
Greg, do you want to speak to that? Can you come up? Operationally, he can answer better than I, Steve.
I've driven by there. I just can't remember what that would.
Yes, we've been using that more as a detail center. Half of the building right now is also service. So we already have 3 bays on that one side of the building. And then we have the other side of the building is used for detailing vehicles.
Okay.
So,
That was leading to Jerry's question.
Thank you.
They were changing customer parking. There was no customer or employee parking.
Not to rehash everything that's been done in planning commission, but just for our education, can you give us an understanding of why the necessity to hook up to public water instead of the well? Is it the expansion in and of itself, or is the well deemed not sufficient?
Yeah,
I can
Jerry,
actually,
jump in.
Is there-
I can speak to this.
Okay.
It's actually a requirement of the zoning
A
ordinance.
Requirement of the zoning.
So
board?
they would either have to go get relief from the zoning hearing board or connect to water, and they
Okay.
decided to connect to water.
Water, okay, thank you very much, Elijah.
I have a question too. Just curious, 7th Street itself, how wide is that street? Does anybody know?
The typical 24
Just typical?
wide cartway.
So when they're gonna do paving, you said 30 feet. That's gonna be the entire
The entire width.
there's not gonna be a bump or any kind of issues?
The 30-foot, we will be doing curb face to
Okay.
curb face. But if you can visualize, if you're going north on Street, you turn, so Keller Brothers is on the left, Weiss on the left and right.
Mhm.
As you're driving westbound, a distance of 30 feet, we have to create a proper milling and what they call an overlay, but it's a smooth transition with
Okay.
properly sealed joints. For a distance of 30 feet while you're driving, that
Okay.
will be new pavement. So it's not just a 10-foot wide trench and
Right.
that's it. So we did take the advice of Elijah and others today into expanding a full length of 30 feet and curb width face to face. So it'll just feel like a new 30-foot section of roadway in that zone there.
Is that almost directly across from where you come out of the Wise? Where that's gonna go? Can't quite. Okay. Yep. Oh, good catch.
So the limit of disturbance line on this grading and utility plan shows where we would be trenching to come through our site and out towards into 7th Street. It is very near, just a little bit east of the intersection with the Weiss Market driveway. So you're very
I was just
accurate
curious
in
where
that,
that was.
in
Okay.
that guess, yes.
So will that interfere with Weiss customers' access there during the period of construction?
We will obviously need to provide proper traffic control for that. The timing of that, I'm sure that through their contractors, we can work with that and make sure that we are doing that at a time when it is least impactful. Obviously, paving,
Yep.
needs to get properly laid and cured for a short period of time. So I think we can orchestrate the logistics of that to not have an impact. I'm imagining we'll need to cone that section off, have proper traffic control, flagging, whatnot during that moment. But I don't expect the water line itself to take more than not even full day.
The water lines, the existing lines in the center line of 7th, so you're only going
Yeah.
to take out the northern section of it, making the connection to the water line in there.
To the connection. So we can keep one lane open, but when we do the true milling and proper overlay, yeah, we want to make sure that that gets done right. And so we will do some additional traffic control for that.
Okay.
Good questions.
I have a few questions. Let's see. I do wish that you had come a little bit closer to the request in terms of the buffer area. I think that the planning commission requested 5 feet. The standard is 15, correct? Planning commission asked for 5 and we have 3, right?
That's correct. We might be able to squeak another 2 feet or so, that will put the vehicles right against the concrete bases that are above ground for the lights that are down the center of that pedestrian aisle. That would really be the maximum we can squeeze in there. I know there have been discussions about using one-way access. It's very difficult to control folks as they are on site looking at cars. We don't want a narrow aisle for the drive. So Keller Brothers felt pretty strongly on that side of it, that it will be somewhat chaotic if we were to neck down to just one width of lane there between the vehicles, because somebody pulls in, they're blocking, and then they'll have people backing up and coming. And so we really truly feel strongly we need to maintain our traffic flow as it's functioning. We could perhaps squeak another 1.5 feet, 2 max in there by sliding. Some of the vehicles will be on display right up against where the concrete bases are.
Okay. So in light of a couple of different issues, I want to bring up a couple of things. One is, I don't know how familiar you are with the term urban heat island, but as we are facing hotter and hotter days, we obviously want to be doing our part
Mhm.
to try to cool our environment as much as possible. And so a couple of things is, first of all, I appreciate you going as far as you did with the plant material, because it is functional. It's not just aesthetically
Right.
pleasing.
Right.
It does help with controlling stormwater runoff.
Mhm.
Minimal in this case, obviously, with the very limited amount that's there, but also the mitigation of urban heat island. I see that for your tree selection, you only selected one large tree. I wish you had done more large trees.
I would offer we could provide some substitution on that for some additional larger species. We're trying to again balance sales and a unique business. I mean, it's difficult to keep up. I would love to see trees all through there and the islands myself as well, but I sympathize with them. I would not want the upkeep for the vehicle sales of having additional trees on the interior. So I think we could certainly look to, if it's a condition for approval, we could certainly look to provide the other species, the larger, instead of the smaller that we have.
Okay.
Okay.
One other thing, actually a couple other things with regard to stormwater. Did you give any consideration to using pervious concrete for your sidewalk, for your new sidewalk walk? And thank you for putting the new sidewalk.
Right.
That would be
Right.
nice to have that extension down there.
Right. We have thought about that. My personal feelings on the pervious concrete is it is extremely rough surface. It is very, I wouldn't want my toddlers running along and falling and scraping knees. It's extremely aggressive. I think that we are providing the grass strip there. So that does provide some greening effect as well as help some with our stormwater. We actually are meeting the requirements for stormwater based on this 20% square foot of our building addition and the increased green spaces that we are providing as we're trying to balance between the needs of the Keller Brothers dealership and the ordinance's requirements.
Yeah, I would concur on the pervious concrete. I've seen that more in natural settings. I wouldn't want to see that in the downtown. The pervious pavings, pervious, everything I've seen with the pervious concrete,
It's
very
rough.
coarse.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I haven't.
In the
seen it
right
to be a
setting,
problem.
in the right setting, I
Yeah.
think it's right.
You have it all around the township building, and I don't think it's been a problem out there, so. Okay, a couple other things, if you'll bear with me. We do have a site that has virtually no stormwater controls on it because of the historic nature of the property. So the one thing I do see is the seepage pit. Do you know when that was constructed? And do you have any idea whether it's still functioning or?
Not really quite sure on the time frame on that.
Okay,
When I'm trying to remember the dates when I was at that location more to see more construction in the parking lot. So I think
hard to
I
remember.
want to go
dates
back to
anymore.
like 2005 or somewhere between 2005, 2010,
Okay,
somewhere in that range.
Is that maybe when you guys did that upper lot there?
That's what I
Yeah,
was,
I
right.
think I remember that
That's
coming
what I
through
was
planning
considering
commission
that-
then.
Because I
Okay.
remember we had to address stormwater then at that time.
Yep.
And that was a big
That's when they did this whole lot over here on the left.
important,
Okay.
objective at that time. So, yeah.
so you have a roof leader from your new addition going directly into an inlet now. In that southern portion of the seepage pit, and our ordinance generally calls for roof leaders to be disconnected. You don't have an opportunity to do that disconnect, but I do have concerns there about pollutants entering the stormwater system. And the stormwater management ordinance in sections 113C and 114A both address steps that should be taken to prevent pollutants from entering. And given the nature of your business there, I'd like to ask that you or make a condition of approval that you incorporate some type of a sock within the inlet to capture any debris that may be coming off of your site. We just had one of our highest levels of
Yeah.
grit in
Mhm.
our years for grit in our stormwater wastewater system. The stormwater system, we're concerned about that. So our engineer is here and can speak to perhaps
Yeah.
what
We-
solution you might use, but
We can put a flex storm filter bag.
okay, he says yes.
I'm not the
Okay.
storm engineer, but I hear the talking, so.
Yes, okay.
We will do that to your engineer's satisfaction, but that is an insert we should be able to put in there to prevent that. Now, the roof water,
It's clean.
you know,
Coming up.
understand,
Yeah.
maybe some bird things, but that happens
Right.
everywhere. But yeah, we are fine with that. We can certainly add that to the inlet there before it enters into that underground system.
And where is your customer entrance for your new building? Will the
It's
customers be
service.
exiting this?
It's service.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is, the service, people will still enter your main building. The cars will just be taken back there for service. There's no customers entering that area.
No, that is
Thank you.
correct.
Okay, thank you. That's
Sure.
great. And my last issue, sorry if I've stolen everybody's, is lighting. What you
Oh.
are doing to protect the neighborhood from lighting. We are
You would,
concerned about light pollution and wondering what you're doing to mitigate that.
Are you guys adding lights?
No.
I don't see any new lights.
Never. Go ahead.
they were down, we have been addressing it with our neighbors
Okay,
constantly. In fact, one of the things that's kind of unique and nice that we were able to do with the new lighting system, that the LED lights that we have now, is that we have a program that we can individually adjust any of those light poles directly. And we've done that with our neighbors already. We've had a neighbor, in fact, it's documented. So we communicated where they were concerned about the brightness of the lights and the nighttime lights, how they affected them and were shining in. So one neighbor was nice enough to work with us and we worked with her. And then we were able to establish and set up a program so that the lights are programmed to come on at the right time, at the right intensity that met all the neighbors, are like, that's fine. It's
Great.
not infringing and it's not too bright for them in the back.
okay. Thank you very much for
Sure.
that. I appreciate that. And thank you for your patience with all my questions.
Oh, it's what we're here for. It's fine.
Good questions, Mary. My question goes back to Scott. The filter for the sock. You were more referencing chemicals or not necessarily grit. So is that filter sufficient to pull out solutions that might be used for repairs?
Yeah, with the flex storms, you can do both. It's a filter bag that sets in the inlet. It has a permanent aluminum top that allows for overflow, but you can put a sock in the bottom of the bag in case there's a gasoline or oil spill or something like that would soak up that material, and then that would just need to be pulled out, disposed of properly, and then replaced with a new one. So that's an add-on that you can get for the flex storms. Yeah. Yeah, that would cover both things, the grit and the
Sure.
oil then.
Thanks, Scott.
I confused myself even when I was talking about that, so.
It's okay.
Does that then become a maintenance concern, or is that a permanent filter sock?
No.
Yeah, there would be long-term maintenance on that,
Okay.
and that would be part of their O&M plan that they would sign and agree to with the borough. And they would agree to maintain that properly. And when the borough goes around and does their BMP inspections, that would be on the list. And whoever from the borough is doing that would check to make sure that it's being maintained properly.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
We can also walk through the modifications. I don't know if you had time to look at them or not. A lot of them are questions and relate to questions that we've been discussing. So Mary, I appreciate that. The first modification would be section 305. It's simply to modification of preliminary plan and have this be a final plan. 402C3, existing features within 200 feet of the property. We do have site survey for the area generally that's important for this project, given the minimal nature of what we're actually doing, just mostly the building addition and the sidewalk pieces. Wetland investigation, section 406, section 602A7, the reconstruction of existing streets. As noted in my presentation, we do agree to the condition to provide fee in lieu of the actual reconstruction of streets, and that is agreeable. Then section 603A2 related to the 15-foot buffer around parking adjacent to public right-of-ways. As we've discussed during our presentation, what we're providing on here, and if need be, as a condition, we could increase that a slight 2-foot max, I would think, and we're going to be right against the bases of those existing concrete light poles there. But if that's desired, that's understandable. And then section 603A3, 5% of the total parking lot area being landscaped. Again, it's primarily existing condition, other than the area that we are providing that building as a minor improvement on the plan. Section 603A4, parking lot within 10 feet of lot lines. Clearly, we have existing nonconformities with our conditions of what we have on this specific property. And then the last would be section 609B3, which relates to the perimeter of commercial parking areas to be screened in the areas near residential. And so, you know, we are providing where we can that screening and such as depicted on the exhibits today.
Any other questions, council? I mean, this is a very unique situation, again, from sitting on the planning commission for several years. There's a lot of things that, you know, I probably would have pushed for more, but we also got to understand we can't go back and like redo the entire site with these things. And to Mary's point, one thing that we have in the ordinance that I was always an advocate for was having the tree islands. I think it was like every 8-10 parking spaces. They get away from that, but we can't have them go back and do that in their entire site. And it's also unique because half of it is display. It's not necessarily parking for customers. But that's something for all of you to know that we have in our ordinance so that you don't get a big sea of parking, but we can't, if this was a brand new development, we could implement. Can't have them go back through and change that on everything for the other 80%, 90% of the site that's not being affected. And with the trees, and this would look totally different if it was a new development coming. Any other questions, council? Questions, public? Chris?
I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I am curious about something. For the record, Chris Strayer, Front Street. I have a question about the whole 30 feet of repaving. Is that required, or is that just some kind of mutual agreement that was made between the borough and Keller Brothers?
I think it's in response to their modification for 602A7 streets, correct? It was a,
Yes.
that was a solution to that.
Yes, it was a solution, and I have to say, we greatly appreciate that consideration from the borough in avoiding going out into 501 and Broad Street and providing a water connection out in that location, knowing the impacts that would have severely on traffic flow and whatnot. So we do appreciate that that is a solution that was suggested.
I can speak a little bit to this too. So this, part of the reason that this was brought up was because 7th was paved last year. And so the borough can refuse any entry into any streets within 5 years. So in discussion with Public Works, they felt that this would be an appropriate amount of restoration, so that there wouldn't be just a utility trench or something, and that there would be a good transition between the paving surface.
That doesn't become like a speed bump if they just
Right.
had the 2 or 3 foot wide trench.
No, and obviously 7th is like I can't tell from back there, but 7th is the path of least resistance compared to like 6th or compared to, I don't even know, was it Spruce behind it, I guess?
And Spruce doesn't have a water line in it, so it's 6th, 7th, or 501.
I see, okay.
Yeah, because I think there's even restrictions on left turns, I believe, out of 7th. So I think it's not heavily used.
Okay, just to clarify, I have no problem with it, and it makes way more sense when it was just paved last year. As a business owner, a commercial property owner, and a resident here of the borough, I just want to make sure we're never forgetting that when we talk about what makes Lititz great, a huge part of that is our businesses, and I want to make sure we're not taxing our businesses in ways that prevent them from being great back to Lititz. But it sounds like, again, because it was just paved last year, that's a different situation. Because obviously UGI doesn't do that at all. They just dig up all over town and we deal with it.
Amen.
So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Did
And
you
it-
consider going to zoning to request a waiver on the water connection? I'm just curious if you had considered that.
I'm not sure if we'd be supported, and we just want to move this project forward. I will also follow up to Chris's discussion and guarantee this 30-foot area will be less expensive than us being required on our own to go through PennDOT.
Yeah.
To deal with that, to deal with traffic control, to try to get
Yeah.
through engineering and drawing development and all of those hoops and bells and whistles. So we do appreciate the borough's willingness to work with us on that.
That would have been a hardship to claim that we're going to stay on the well. Any other questions from public? Council? I was taking some notes of some different things that came out about from Mary's was the option for the larger species and then the flex storm filter, the 2 things that I heard.
That's what I heard as well.
And also 5-foot buffer. An additional.
Which I don't believe she's committing to, but
Yeah.
we'll
I-
try to their best to.
And
I think it's a good effort, but it's not requirement, right?
yeah, it's, well, the planning commission The requirement's 15. Planning Commission was recommending 5. I'm satisfied with the 3, primarily to the extent you're adding something more than you have there now, and you've got some of a planting buffer. So you're getting it. I don't know if that extra 2 feet is going to mean you're going to add X number more shrubs in there at this point. So I'm satisfied with the 3, primarily because it now gives you a planting strip that wasn't there.
So Elijah, how will this affect other development relative to the buffer if this is awarded? The ordinance is the 5 feet.
Well, the ordinance is 15 for a
15,
new
I mean,
site.
15, yeah.
And when you're looking at an existing site like this, you have to look at them each on a case-by-case basis and based on their kind of unique situation. So just because you go 3 here doesn't mean that you have to give 3 to every other one that comes in, because it might be that there's closer houses or there could be details that we just don't know.
Okay.
So you're not binding yourself to it.
Okay.
There ends up being, Jerry, modification. I hate to say almost every applicant because you write an ordinance, it's not, everything doesn't fit exactly into the box. And that's kind of why the planning commission
Okay,
goes through some of
thank
those
you.
discussions to see.
Yeah.
Again, it's not
Appreciate
always
that.
going to work, but there's certain things. The key thing is to get some concession, get it to a point, to get as close as you can to meeting requirements. I say to the
Could we
requirements,
meet
those
in the middle with 4? I'm only concerned about, honestly, I have seen plantings put in narrow buffers and they don't do well. You're planning to put some plants in there. They need room to survive. They need room to not get hit by vehicles, to not scratch your vehicles. They need room to survive. And I think if you're gonna invest in plantings, give them an extra foot. 3 feet is not very much at all.
I will note that 3 feet, there are, I didn't really introduce this in this way, but along this edge, there are some openings and there are 3-foot the concrete bases to the light poles themselves are 3 feet. 4 feet will, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it will create a little bit more of an oddity across a foot strip of what will end up being mulch at the back of that. They're like pyramid shaped concrete bases to the lights. I should have brought photos. I apologize on that. So we were trying to go with the 3 so it lined up and it made a logical look to what's happening. And I understand, what you're indicating. We will have to ensure that we're getting good soil materials. We're getting good depth. We're not just going to pull out and a little bit of stone and throw some topsoil. And we want those plants surviving. I think Greg will be after ELA Group if we don't do a good job there and his plants don't survive as to what we're recommending to be placed in there. So that's another item for consideration is it's going to be a bit awkward to go wider because it's going to be a mulch notch behind the light pole, whereas this seemed visually logical to us, which is also why we chose 3 feet.
And Mary, to support your recommendation, do you have suggestions for plantings that should or should not be used, or possibly examples of where you've seen these that have not survived? And
No.
okay,
Not specifically. I trust the ELA Group's landscape architects
Mhm.
have provided you with some good suggestions.
Yeah.
But if you want to see some examples, go over and look at what they planted next to the elementary school playground there along Raspberry. It is,
but it's elementary. Okay,
yes,
thank you.
doesn't look
Please.
so good.
Right.
Just to follow up on Mary's point, how will that strip be irrigated? Will you do some type of drip line?
Honestly, the parking lot sheet flows to it. A pretty good area there slopes in that direction. So some of the area from where the aisle and the display space is naturally draining into that space. So that will also improve stormwater in that zone. It won't come across pavement and go across the sidewalk. We'll be inserting our landscape bed in there and they'll be benefiting from the sheet flow and some of those areas that do come that direction.
Okay.
And obviously we're going to have, there will be watering to get them well established as the trees, gator bags, all the things that are normal to be in good practice to establish once those are installed. We'll have some maintenance requirements on the contractors on
And
that
just,
as
and
well.
just so everybody knows, there will be, as Scott was in the operation made, since this is a required buffer, if all that were to die, they've got to replace.
Just as a sort of sidebar here, because this came up a couple of months ago regarding your parking lot, and that was the vehicle drivers who didn't pay attention to the regulations regarding exit from Dunkin' Donuts, I believe, and were using a cut through to your facility. That's something that's came up in our meeting a few months ago. Okay, no, you're not aware of
It wasn't your problem. It wasn't your problem that you were
Dunkin'
causing.
Donuts, but I'm not sure about the drive.
Okay,
I know over the years, and I'm a traffic light person because I know what it's like pulling out on the Broad Street. I'm gonna go south and turn right, but I am not gonna go north coming out of our
out of your
parking lot.
parking lot, right?
So we encourage all of our customers, please go to Sixth Street, please use this traffic light.
Okay,
There was an instance years ago when we had a car that we just delivered brand new, and someone pulled straight across to get to the gas station and they got hit. So we're well aware of that, but we really talk to our customers about not
not doing
traversing.
that. And I think the incident that happened was the opposite, that someone was leaving Dunkin' Donuts and
Yeah.
used your facility as a cut through to get to easily
First,
get where they were.
This
to
wasn't
get
your
to, so-
problem. They're supposed to
wasn't
be
your
taking
problem, but
They-
a right and
right-hand
heading north, and they're
turn
heading
lanes,
over.
That's required.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay,
I agree with that.
Okay.
okay. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the request from Keller Brothers. I'm referencing ELA Group's Land Development Plan Submission Number 4 dated August 20th, which references DMA Review Comments Letter dated August 13th to grant the waivers suggested in these letters. We have lived through all of the numbers. I won't go through them all because I wrote most of them down, but I'm not sure I have all of them, but they are all referenced in these documents. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this request.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Opposed.
One opposed, motion approved.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you very much.
All right, have no resolutions, no agreements, and we are moving on to council member forum. Ken?
Yes, Steve, good evening, everybody. And we're going to start out with our report from Doug Zook from Infomark. He's going to give us an executive level of some highlights of what's happened at our water and wastewater plant. Welcome, Doug.
Good evening. I'm the incoming project manager for Infomark for the water and wastewater plants. Both plants are fully operational. We got quite a few projects done in the last month. Anaerobic tank 1 grit removal was completed, and as somebody mentioned, that there was more grit than we had expected in that. So we're going to continue to monitor that. Tank number 23 cleaning was completed, and that had less grit in it than we expected. Tank 13 clarifier drive replacement was completed. The CPEX sludge pump in the dryer building was also rebuilt. That project is done. And an update on the well 3 pump. The pump is ready. We are currently waiting for PP&L to schedule moving of the overhead lines in order to get that installed. So that should be coming up fairly soon. We don't have a date on that yet. And then rebate accounts are $2,914 under budget for the month and $32,004 over for year to date. And that's all I have unless anyone has questions on the report.
I do, but I'll let anybody else go first.
I'm done.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
Could some of the grit maybe resulting from a lot of the construction that we've had in the borough here?
I'm not sure what you've had going on. It could be if the construction was in the vicinity of a manhole or an open manhole, or if it had anything to do with manhole replacement or refurbishment. It could be. typically what you're going to see is a buildup of grit over the years. We do have grit removal at the beginning of the process. However, it doesn't catch everything. And like I said, I'm fairly new, but I'm pretty sure that some of these tanks haven't been cleaned out in quite a few years. We're currently putting a plan together for cleaning one tank per year until they're all done, and then putting them on a schedule.
How is the new powder chemical performing in the water plant?
It's performing well. It's not quite, it doesn't perform quite as good as the liquid magnesium, and we use that for digestion to eliminate some solids to put into our dryer to reduce the sludge. It doesn't work quite as well as the liquid, but it does work well. It's a good option in the summertime. It's less expensive. What our plan is right now is to switch back over to the liquid magnesium for the winter when we get less digestion in the tank.
Yeah, we appreciate the focus on the budget and some of the substitutions of chemicals. We appreciate the savings you made. Any other questions from council? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Infomark report for our water and wastewater plant for the month of July.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Hey, thank you, Doug. The rest of my reporting is going to be quick. The Water Sewer Committee had no report this month. We meet tomorrow. And then the Borough Authority, we meet in October. So Mary's going to take it away with giving us some highlights from the Stormwater Committee as well as the County Hazard Mitigation Mapping. Mary?
Thank you. So let's go ahead and take a look first at the map that was developed by Jordan Garner, our environmental coordinator. And this map is being developed in response to two things that are going on. You've heard me talk before in previous meetings about the County Hazard Mitigation Plan that is being developed now. All municipalities within the county, all 60 municipalities are invited and encouraged to be a part of this planning process. I believe it's a multi-year process, at least a couple. And the first step is really to identify what your hazards are. So we are going through and in conjunction with the County Act 167 stormwater management planning effort, we have begun identifying areas where we have recurrent flooding. And this doesn't mean the big floods from Sandy and tropical storms, things like that. I mean, it could include that, but it's also looking at areas where we have recurrent nuisance type flooding. You know, we have larger storms these days with a lot more rain in a very short duration of time. Sometimes the sewer systems can't handle it. So I'm going to ask Rob if you would just zoom into the top right-hand corner of the map of the borough, and I'm going to identify just a few of the locations here. The ones in yellow, Noble Street, for instance, which is right where Rob has his pointer right now. If you want to click on that, Rob, I believe we are going to make this map public, or you'll be able to come in and look at the map. But we have identified that as a location. There are no stormwater inlets there. So ultimately, there are other ones there. If you'll zip down Locust Street right there. Yeah, click on that one. I can't read from here, but what's that saying?
Probably the confluence
The
of
bridge, that's the bridge flooding.
I think it's the confluence of the Huber Run coming in
Oh.
the bed
Right.
of the Santa Domingo.
Okay, right. So we have identified a number of locations throughout the borough. I can't tell you how many there are, but I want to encourage you, if you witness flooding in your neighborhoods as you're out and about, please call and let us know so that we can add that to our, put that on our radar, because ultimately over time, we want to begin to incorporate best management practices to address that, look at where we might be able to limit impervious surface that is unnecessary and contributing to these kinds of conditions. So that's all I have on that. Does anybody have any questions?
The other thing, too. I know we've had, I don't know if you call it stream irrigation, or it's done over the years to try to, that whole New Street Park that was done, there, try to help some of that. And I know we've looked at other areas, get the water out
Yes,
downstream, out quicker before the rest of the runoff gets.
right. And that's a good point. We just heard mention about our environmental coordinator going out and inspecting the best management practices or stormwater facilities on a regular basis. Those are also mapped here so that we know where those are and can identify all of those within the area. Those are the ones in blue. The green are things that are like grassed swales or kind of ditches, we called them when I was little and grew up in Tennessee. Everybody had a ditch in front of their front yard, and that's where the water flowed. So these are engineered stormwater swales. So we now have some really good mapping to help us understand those conditions better. So again, if anybody has any problem areas you want to report, please call or email Jordan Garner with that information. And that's all I have on that. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, as a user of the Chesapeake Bay, I really appreciate the Lititz Borough's attention to these kind of things because it does help the Chesapeake Bay recover from some of the environmental challenges that it's had. And so our borough is paying attention to that. So I think we should note that.
Yeah, and Mary, just for our education, who's the gatekeeper of this map and what's the committee and who's on the committee that's responsible for?
Okay, so the map was developed by Jordan Garner, our environmental coordinator. There are two different committees running. The hazard mitigation plan is being run by the county, and Dwayne Ober is our liaison on that. Mike, are you also attending those meetings and participating? Okay. But borough staff has also participated, I think, in one meeting or contributed information that Dwayne has requested. So Dwayne Ober is our representative on that county planning initiative. And then for the Act 167 stormwater management plan effort, Elijah and Jordan attended the kickoff meeting for that planning effort, which was just held last month, within the last month or so. And that is just getting started. It's being led by the county planning department in conjunction with the Lancaster Clean Water Partners and the Lancaster County Conservation District. So they're in charge of that planning effort with the county planning department as the lead.
Great, thank you.
And I just want to make a comment, follow up on what Jerry just said about the Chesapeake Bay. We have obligations through our municipal separate storm sewer system, our MS4 permit, that we must meet, and it costs us a lot of money to meet those obligations. And every time we let somebody, I'm going to say off the hook for contributing financially to reducing their impact, that is an impact that the rest of the borough's residents have to bear. And so it's not like the cost of dealing with stormwater goes away. So it's a very fine line that we have to walk between understanding the profit loss of businesses and understanding how these costs then are borne across the community. The stormwater basin, and I'll just lead right into my next agenda item. The stormwater basin that is being constructed over behind the rec center to handle regional stormwater is a cost that we will bear. And unfortunately, the grant that we applied for, the National Fish and Wildlife Federation, NIFWIF grant, we just learned that we did not get that. So we will need to begin starting to look for additional sources of funding for that. And the Stormwater Committee is beginning to look at that. Fortunately, that project is delayed a little bit and we've got a little bit more time to make some other applications, but it is a significant cost to deal with stormwater and the regulations that go along with that. And we're trying to balance that. So that's all that I have.
And just to that end, because I think it's worth repeating that these are not voluntary obligations we have.
No.
These are
Yeah.
federally mandated obligations that we are required to adhere to. So
That's right.
And it's
they
a
do
big
come
part of
with a
what
cost.
created Jordan's role years ago. Every municipality has to have somebody who's overseeing, managing S4. So to the point, Jerry, just so everybody understands, it's a requirement.
Yes.
It didn't used to be that way, but what Mary would know 10, 15-ish years ago.
It's been 25 years probably
Okay.
since the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES,
But the MS4,
became
yeah,
right. The MS4 Phase 2 communities, which we are, was probably 20 years ago that we were supposed to begin complying, and many communities did not start complying when they should have.
right.
So a lot of us are playing catch up and our waterways are beginning to get better, but we've got a long way to go.
Okay, good discussion, good education. Steve, I give it back to you.
All right. Tanea, streets and traffic.
Okay. First off, I have the final repair invoice for the emergency paving repairs on Main Street. Total amount for Slouch Incorporated is $33,428.56. Now, this is the one we talked about last month. Insurance is still considering. Hopefully, we should be getting a final determination even as early as next week. But in interim, I wanted to get the bill approved. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the emergency repairs to Main Street, the amount of $33,428.56.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Okay, got a special events application for Lititz Lions Halloween Parade. It's going to take place on October 28th. Start time is 7 p.m. and running time till 9 p.m. It's put on by the Lititz Lions Club, and it's going to close the Main Street from Oak to East Main, and then from East Main to Broad Street. And cash prizes, food stands, all that good stuff. So lots and lots of candy.
We hope.
Kids love that, yes.
Are you dressing up?
Possibly. All right, I'd like to, anybody have questions about that? Nope. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special event for the Lititz Lions Halloween Parade on October 28th, 2024.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Okay, I've got an activity application for the Warwick Marching Band Competition. Going to be on October 12th, 2024. Start at 4, end at 10 p.m. Going to be at the Warwick High School. The marching band is putting that on for the band competition. So anybody have any questions about that? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Warwick band competition, marching band competition, October 12th, 2024.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Okay, the next up is the release of West 7th paving bond. Elijah, would you mind with that one?
Sure, this is just a follow-up to what was approved earlier. This would essentially allow Keller Brothers to cut into the road and do the installation that was discussed. I believe that this then opens it up for others to come in and do it as well. Rob, is that correct? Yeah. So you'd have to release it for everyone in opening this up. So anything that would come after that would then be held with the street opening permit process.
And we have to release it for the entire extent that was paved within the borough. of 7th. That's
I would
correct.
assume it would be between the intersections.
Just between the.
So it'd be
two
between
intersections.
Spruce and
Spruce and
Broad.
Okay,
Now, there's not a huge amount west of there, but I would say it would be between the intersections.
okay.
Do you have any questions about that?
Nope.
Anybody in the public? All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the release of the West 7th paving bond for Keller Brothers.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, motion approved.
Just a couple things I just wanted to mention. So the Public Works Department's been doing an excellent job with paving and various projects around our town. So at the next September meeting, Streets and Traffic is going to highlight the Public Works projects like that were completed in 2023 and the ones that have been accomplished so far this year for the community.
That's great.
And one other thing mentioned too, while the recent cancellation of the Lititz Craft Show, I'm sure, as well as the shutdown from Main Street for the water main break was, I'm sure, disappointing to many, but I wanted to commend the downtown Lititz merchants and crafters for their resilience this past the craft show. They organized music. When they shut down for the water main break, they had they were lining the streets with chalk. They set up craft stations. The farmers market happened. Store owners enjoyed a strong turnout from visitors and local residents. So despite the cancellations, the days were definitely a resounding success thanks to their effort and to the community support. Wanted to mention that.
What a way to make lemonade out of lemon.
Yes. That's all I have.
Great, back to you, Ken, Finance.
Okay, Finance has a few items to share with everybody. First, Council, you have the financial statement in front of you. You'll notice that expenses outpaced our revenue for the month of August. If you take a look at the report, at this time we've collected about 62% of our revenue for the year, and we've spent right about 53% of the year. We are anticipating some more large expenses as we complete some of these projects around our community to fall into place, and we're on schedule, expecting them to come in. Any questions? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the financial statement for August and pay all the invoices.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion approved.
Thank you. Bad timing.
The second item of business is to continue to just give thanks for some generous donations from some of our groups in town. And this month, in lieu of taxes, Word of Life Mennonite Church made a generous donation to the borough. So we want to recognize them and say thank you for that. The last item I have to share with everybody is that the Lincoln and Cedar Culvert project is complete. If you recall, about a couple years ago, we started on this project, and we've now completed it. We budgeted $739,000. The actual expense came in at $771,000. So we were off just a little bit, but we got a good job done, and it's going to be sturdy and provide what we needed to do. To support this this project, we sourced funding from a grant. That's the LSA grant of $400,000, and then we secured a 2023 GO bond where we used funding of $339,000. What I'm asking council to consider tonight is that there's a $31,313 difference. We need to make one final payment, and I'd like to move that money from the GO bond source of funding and then make the final payment. So that would be, again, $31,313 move from the GO bond 23 source of funding to the stormwater construction fund.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion approved.
And then, Steve, one final item. Finance met this month, and our focus was just organizing ourselves for the budget season. We have a few new requests out to our committees and department heads, and they're all coming through with results. So we're organizing ourselves to prepare for the 2025 budget season. That's it.
Moving on, Jerry, personnel.
Thank you. Committee appointments, as you know, one of the goals of the Borough Council is to be more intentional and structured about appointments to our various committees, borough committees and commissions. This is one way our community can get really involved in the government part of our organization. So to accomplish these goals, the need for volunteers has been included in our budget, in our borough's website. Interested residents complete a questionnaire. Those who are interested and completed a questionnaire receive an interview by myself as the Personnel Committee Chair. And then finally, we make a recommendation to the Borough Council. So tonight, Chairman Lee, I have 2 Planning Commission recommendations for the council to consider. The first one is that John Piazza, he has served on the Planning Commission for several years. And I have received the following communication from John. He says, due to continued health issues, I am requesting that the Borough Council accept my request and allow me to retire from the Lititz Borough Planning Commission effective August 20th, 2024. I had a long conversation with John, and he agrees that this is best for himself, but he wants to stay involved in an appropriate way, and I'll talk about that later. So I move to accept the resignation of John Piazza from the Planning Commission effective August 20th, 2024.
Second.
The motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion approved. And I'll just say, I mean, John has served the community, I want to say it's got to be almost 25 years. I got on the Planning Commission in 2000 and he had been on it
Yeah.
prior to that. So he has put a lot of hours into the community and sat in a lot of planning commission meetings. So it's a huge loss.
Yeah, so as I talked to him, I said, you know, as a result of his long service and the value he has brought to the committee, I'd like for him to remain as an informal advisor to the committee, receiving materials from the committee, and as he is able to make comments, either in person or through email, on the Planning Commission agenda item. So it's one way of keeping him a bit informed and recognizing the long commitment he has had and the value he's brought to our community.
Well, I think that'll be great because again, just sitting on there for years, there's a lot of history. There's things you might remember on a project that's being redeveloped. So it'll be a great resource just to pull some of the history over of the 25 years of plans. Planning Commission.
He was happy to do that as he is able. The second recommendation is to fill John's membership on the Planning Commission. I have interviewed Todd Dickinson. Todd has completed the Lititz Borough Boards and Commission questionnaire. And so Todd and I met, and Todd's qualifications to serve on the Planning Commission include, of course, he's a resident of the borough. He has served as an alternate on the Planning Commission. He holds a BA and MA in political science from American University. He has helped create the A-frame zoning ordinance. He's a creative thinker and strategic thinker. He co-owns Aaron's Books, highly committed to assuring that Lititz is a welcoming community, and he wants to give back to the community by serving on the Planning Commission. So I'm delighted and happy to recommend him. So I move to appoint Todd Dickinson to the Planning Commission, effective August 27, 2024 to December 31, 2024 to complete the term of John Piazza.
Second.
The motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Secondly, to appoint Todd Dickinson for a full 3-year Planning Commission term effective January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2028.
Is that a
Additional
motion?
Motion,
or-
yes, I'm sorry.
Second. Did you ask Todd?
Wait, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion approved.
Todd is here. Do you have any comments that you want to make?
All right.
Steve, that's all I have.
Appropriate to move right on to planning, Christine.
I have nothing to report.
Zoning, Mary.
No report.
Buildings and grounds, Ken.
Yeah, I have just some good news going on in the Parks Committee. Let me share some highlights. The group met last week, August 19th. We discussed about some broken equipment. The U-bounce, I think, over at Spruce Street Park needs to be replaced, so they're sourcing some equipment there. We also had a chance to review our purpose statement. And so, Jerry, we're going over our thoughts and going to come back with some feedback. What's really sort of cool is we've got some trees organized by Jordan to go in this fall on 6th Street Park. So that's something that's yet to come over at the new park there. One of the neat things that I had opportunity to observe is just the involvement and the excitement around the Revolutionary War Memorial and some of the excitement that's going on there. So the committee is coming up with a fantastic plan to remove some old trees that are in jeopardy of some of the properties. If we have a storm, they could fall. So we want to remove those. And then we're looking at doing some improving a sitting gathering area. We're going to formalize a path. We're going to use landscaping to sort of further define the property and make it welcoming for folks that are going to visit there. And then we've got the interest of the neighbor, Ned Beck, who is going to offer some information about his house and property had the tobacco shop that was used by the soldiers to purchase tobacco many, many years ago. So he's going to incorporate some information there that the committee is going to use. So it was a really good meeting. A lot of good stuff going on. Budget requests were starting to be prepared for next year. And also there was a request for, in collaboration with the Shade Tree Group, to identify a lot of the trees in the parks and identify them and label them with tags so that people visiting can actually come in and see that's a species of oak or maple and learn about the scientific name and maybe a value that tree provides in its wood. And finally, the Parks Committee unanimously approved the park behavior statement that was presented at the July 30th Borough Council meeting. And they're also looking at maybe adopting some signs that condense the code of conduct for each park and that we're consistent across the borough. And that's my report.
I'm looking forward to the Revolutionary War Memorial Park. You know, that's been talked about for several years because one, I think a lot of people don't realize that's a park.
It's going to be,
And secondarily, there's a story there that I think a lot of people within the community aren't even aware of. Quite a bit of unique history. So I think that'll really highlight it once they develop that plan.
I have a question, Ken. Just curious, you said the Spruce Street piece of equipment broke already? Is this in the new park? Or-
No, it's on Spruce.
I'm
Spruce
thinking
Street,
of- Okay.
across
sorry,
from
okay, I
Hendrick's
heard,
Flower Shop.
yes. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the lot.
It's Spruce Street. There's a Spruce Street.
Yeah, I always think of that as Lions.
It's a
Park.
U-bounce piece of
Yeah, by
equipment.
Okay.
second and Spruce, where the Little League or T-ball field is.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Jerry says he has something.
Yeah, benefits
insurance.
and insurance. So the community and the council know that I'm doing some work on this. The borough, this is insurance benefits insurance quick report. The borough provides a package of benefits and insurances for borough employees. Adequate and affordable employee benefits is an important way to support our employees to encourage employee retention. So as chair of the Benefit and Insurance Committee and a new member of Borough Council, I'm beginning to educate myself about the various benefits provided by the borough. I'm not able to provide an extensive report on employee benefits at this time. However, I have learned that the borough benefits and insurance are very comprehensive. So currently the employee benefits include our medical, dental, and vision insurance, group life, short-term and long-term disability, a great pension plan, workers' compensation, and an employee assistance program. So just a couple of general comments. Generally, the borough's benefit packages run through a year, January 1st through December 31st. The health insurance broker is Benecon, and the health carrier is Highmark. The borough participates in an intergovernmental insurance cooperative consisting of other municipalities located in York and the Lancaster region. Now, depending on the performance of the cooperative, costs can increase or decrease each year. The borough anticipates a report from Benecon about the performance of the cooperative, so healthcare costs can be projected in our 2025 budget. I'm aware that the borough's pension plan has been audited and that the Finance Committee is monitoring the performance of the plan to ensure the borough can meet its obligations to employees upon retirement. And I will continue to update the council and the public about the employee benefits as I receive more information about our benefit. I just wanted the community and the council to know that efforts are being made to monitor those.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Mary, anything you want to share about the regional plan?
Yes, thank you for asking. My favorite topic. At the door, hopefully you saw a flyer advertising the September 10th special meeting. Actually, it's a regular meeting that we will be holding on September 10th here at the Borough Hall to consider adoption of the Regional Comprehensive Plan Strengthening Community 2030. Presentation was given at the Planning Commission meeting in August. And we do have some comments from that that we'll be considering. We'll have a brief presentation of the plan at that meeting to condense the multi-page document down to some highlights that people may be interested in, particularly looking at the goals around things like housing and affordability and accessibility, things like that within the community. So I encourage everybody to come to that. The meeting really, I'm hoping, will be a kickoff for a lot of work that we need to be doing in the coming years to realize our vision for this region. It's not as much about commenting on the current plan and adopting it. It's about kicking off the work that we need to be doing together in the months and years to come to ensure the continued benefits that we realize of living in this wonderful community. So I encourage you to pick one of these flyers up. If you've got a place you can post it, please do. If you would like one and didn't get one, Elijah has them available. We're going to try and get them up at the library and other places, coffee shops, things like that. And we're hoping for a good turnout, and we might even have like a little celebration here on the 10th, a little bit of maybe ice cream or something to entice people to come. I'll buy. And so anyway, just really excited to get to work on addressing some of the issues that our community faces. So hope you all will come, spread the word, and get others here that night.
Mary, you said there was some comments or revisions at the Planning Commission. Was there a good attendance from the public at the Planning Commission meeting?
No.
I would just say that.
We did have at the first two meetings that the Planning Commission held, they did have some residents present, people who had been there for other items and decided to stay and were really excited to hear about this, as well as a couple of people who came just for that topic because they may have heard about it from me or somebody else, or attended some of the meetings that were held for the development, during the development of
That's
the
what I'm trying to
plan.
figure out. I
So,
mean, there was a
yeah.
lot of kick this thing off a year or two ago. There's a lot of involvement
Yeah.
trying to figure out how we had that engagement during that period to ensure that great to be engaged at the beginning, but really ultimately the final product is the most important thing that comes out of that.
Yeah.
Just
And-
trying to figure out how to get that same engagement.
Yeah.
Well, you scare people for one thing. So I'll just throw out there one of the things, and this is from my past experience of being involved in a community that I used to live in where we were faced with a big development in our neighborhood, in our little crossroads community that did not fit with our community characteristics. And we used the comprehensive plan to resolve that issue in a way that was acceptable to the community. These plans are very important. They set the policy for the future. The future land use map guides zoning changes. So really when these things come up in the future and there are things decisions that we need to make in the future,
Yeah,
that will be guided in some part by the current plan.
Guides a lot of different. Yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
within the ordinances, but the point I was trying to make was we had a lot of engagement during early on. How sometimes you scare people off when you start to say, get on committees and there's time, but I think we had a lot of engagement during those early public meetings, trying to figure out why it's waned and how to re-energize.
Mary and I have had this conversation, and as you look at who has been involved in this planning process over the years, there's been a number of changes of leaders in our community around that. You think about the school, you think about Warwick Township, you think about other things. And I'm concerned that we don't have a champion for the plan in terms of its moving forward. And who do we find to really help us move this plan forward in a way that responds to the things that Mary
Well,
was
there's
saying?
there's different levels of the committees there, and I don't remember the names, Elijah. There's the steering committee, and then you had the different groups of committees. I don't know who's on each of those steering committees at the moment.
It hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
So there will be a coordinating committee that will be established.
That's usually, Jerry, in my experience, I think I've gone through 4 of these, usually ends up the group champion.
So that's why it's important to be involved now from the beginning, because we really need new voices at the table.
Yeah.
We really do. We don't need the same people. I mean, we do need the same people showing up, but we need new voices at the table. We want to extend the table.
I appreciate the flyer, and then we'll encourage folks here, but I'd like to ask if Laura, if you would consider an article to help promote this. This will be front page material. It's something that I would kindly ask that you can give consideration. It's important. Thank you.
Steve, the planning committee had a robust conversation about this plan, and I think Todd's here. I don't know if he has any comments to make, but
Yeah, I'm not questioning the discussions, the comments. I'm questioning or just trying to figure out how to get the same point we say with getting volunteers. It's not like we have a lineup out the door
right.
on the various committees we have here. Same thing when we have this. It's not like we have 50 people waiting to get, but just trying to keep that engagement, because there was a mix of people who came to any of those meetings a year ago. I mean, there was probably 100 different people at each of the different groups.
100 may be a little high, but
I'm just saying if you added up the different ones,
yeah.
not each one.
So the main action that's called for in the plan, from my reading of it, is to hold community conversations to identify actions, policies, programs that need to be taken to realize the goals. That means we need to bring people together. And I have been giving a lot of thought and talking to other people about ways that we might do that are not coming to sit in a meeting, but maybe we have a gathering at the library and we say, hey, we're going to have a conversation about this article about housing. And we're going to talk about this, and we're going to begin to understand issues collectively. There's also some work that's been done recently around the housing issue, in particular, using Franklin and Marshall College professor helped guide some discussions with the community that were representative of the community. It was new people coming together to share their voices. So I think there's a lot, I guess I'll just say there's a lot of opportunities to do things differently in terms of engaging new people and not having this be just a bunch of committee meetings, but really engaging with each other in conversation about what we want to see happen and what should happen to address the issues that we're facing.
The other thing to remember with this, guys, it's more than Lititz. Warwick
Yep.
Township,
Yes,
Elizabeth Township.
right.
That's also, as I'm thinking, why some of those
Yep.
meetings were larger. But even though we don't have a bunch of people at the Lititz Borough Planning Commission, no idea how many show up at the Warwick Planning Commission, Elizabeth, so that was a broader range of people that were coming to each of those and will be moving forward. Just Lititz.
So Warwick adopted their plan last week and they had 0 people there. We want to beat that.
Well, and that was one of my 2 questions regarding the September 10th meeting. Is that solely for Lititz Borough, or do you anticipate Warwick Township and Elizabeth Township representatives being there as well to participate in the discussion?
This is just for us. This is the public hearing for the borough, but I don't think that we would exclude anybody from outside the borough sharing comments about it. We need to build conversations across the 3 communities. So I don't
That's-
think that we could exclude anybody from commenting, but their comments may be reflected differently. And I'm
Yeah.
going to turn to Elijah and ask him, because this will be an actual public hearing that we'll need to conduct.
Right, like if they made a suggestion to change something that was on Warwick Town, that basically was a Warwick Township strategy, we wouldn't have the ability to do that or really consider that.
But our goal on Tuesday is just to approve the comprehensive plan as it is published.
That's right. Approve it and get people excited about implementation.
Okay.
Implementation.
That leads to my second question. Is there reference to the treats on the flyer?
Yes. Kind of. It
All right.
says following a brief presentation, let
Let's
the opportunity to comment.
continue on. We've done everything we can to generate some excitement, at least with the individuals in the room.
Thank you very much, Mary. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Mary?
No, that's all. Thank you. I don't know if anybody,
We
if
have,
anybody from the community here has comments or questions about it, would be my only thing.
and if you don't, you're going to have plenty of time next
2 weeks.
10.
2 weeks.
The 10th, September 10th.
All right, let's move on. You have David Miller's report in your packet, and you actually have Scott here. Scott, is there anything else you want to share beyond what's in your report? Anybody have questions for Scott? Nope. Let's move on. Report from Mayor and the Chief of Police. Mayor is not here. Chief?
In regards to the mayor, he called me earlier today and just said he has a personal issue he has to deal with, so he wouldn't be able to make it. I did ask him if he had any report. He said he's been doing some community relations. That's what he told me. So he does a lot of community relations. Just one thing, you see, I have a request there. The school district reached out to me. They had 2 school security staff members out there. One of them resigned to move on to another job. And that school security officer helped provide getting the buses out of the middle school on the campus drive. With all the construction out there, they had asked if we have any extra crossing guards, and believe it or not, we do. And so I'm just asking permission to have a crossing guard out there in the afternoons to help the school buses out of the middle school on the campus drive. They have a very short time period to get the buses from the middle school to high school and out. So this would probably be for the whole school year, or maybe until they hire another security staff. We don't normally do this. We normally just do it on our public streets, but this is something I thought to kind of give a reach out to the school, because they have a lot of things going on out there right now. So they would be paying the whole amount. Typically, the school district only pays 50% of the crossing guards, and the borough pays the other 50%. I told them, if we're going to do it, you're going to pay all of it.
Barry, does this position require any special training
No, just our crossing guards.
They
They
can do that?
get trained. Yep.
It's an existing cross.
for safety reason?
Yeah, they have all the gear and everything like that, and they receive training.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm just looking for, you can see on there, it's not a lot of money. It's $13 an hour for an hour and a half that they're there. And so it would be whatever that is, for just in the afternoons. And we have a couple substitutes. Actually, Chris is one of our substitute crossing guards too. But we would ask, there's one, we're not asking him to do it. We already have him assigned. But we have
Might
someone.
not get out on time.
There is a crossing guard. She was a crossing guard here 35 years ago. and she's come back. She's asked to come back. So she certainly has experience. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Chief, does the $13 an hour fee that they would reimburse us cover our cost fully?
Yeah, it covers, it doesn't cover liability.
Okay,
It does cover the cost of the person,
okay,
the salary or the hourly rate,
okay.
but the liability is not. And that would be something we would have to look at in totality to try to bill the school district for that. That'd be another discussion.
We need a motion for this, Elijah. I'd like
Yeah.
to make a motion that we approve utilizing one of the school crossing guards to serve as the school security officer for the rest.
Not
One of the Lititz Borough Police.
one of the Lititz Borough crossing guards
Crossing
to help
guards.
the school out.
Thank
Yes.
you. One of the Lititz Borough crossing guards to help the school.
Yep.
For the remainder of the school year.
Yes.
Second.
A motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion approved.
I have nothing else. You have any questions? I was going to touch on Tanea about the craft show. She already touched on it, so thank you. So, I mean, I think a lot of the merchants were happy with the outcome. And it was the kind of informal poll I took.
Okay.
We do have some events coming up, obviously in September in town, all in one day, a race, a festival, and a beer fest. So that's all in one day. So maybe if you want to, September 21st, you don't want to come through town, go around.
Thanks, Chief. You have Rob and Elijah's reports in your packet also. Elijah, I'll start with you. You have anything further to share?
Nothing additional to add.
Anybody questions on Elijah's report? Rob, anything to add to your report?
Yes, Steve, just two things. Andy wanted me to share that the first phase of our paving work is pretty much all done. What is left to do is some sealing and some touch-up curb work at different spots. We have 2 ditches to repair on Broad Street, both north and south. Those permits should come in early September from what Andy indicated. Once we get those, then we'll go ahead and do those ditches as well. And last of all, not in the report, we did receive one proposal for the HVAC replacement here at Borough Hall. So work with the engineers to kind of go through all that. There's a lot of things it's missing, but for the most part, it's there. We'll just have to work through all the details of it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody question for Rob?
Thank you for your work.
All right. Nothing more there. No new business, no unfinished, no other. Last thing on the agenda is public comments. Any public comments regarding topics not discussed on the agenda? Anything online, Rob? Okay. Last thing on the agenda?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.